All right. Well, we are at 11:31, so we will get started here in our webinar. So thank you everyone for joining us here today for At Home at UWaterloo, addressing your graduate housing questions. And we hope that we're able to share a lot of helpful information for you, that it will help you as you're making your decision about where you want to live when you come to Waterloo. So joining us today is myself. My name is Carrie Huber. I'm the manager of graduate marketing and recruitment, and I will be your host today and sharing some information. And also with us, we have Maria Concat, who is our housing services advisor from Campus Housing. Also from Campus Housing, we have Gwen DeBoekhurst joining us. She's our manager of graduate and student family housing. We have Brianna Johnston, and she's the admissions and guest services coordinator from United College, which you'll hear a little bit more about what United College is coming up. And we also have Maria Brisbane, who is our housing coordinator from the Graduate Student Association, and she is also a current PhD student. And so we'll be hearing from everyone in a little bit. So now before we get started, I would like to recognize that the University of Waterloo acknowledges that much of our work takes place on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. So our main campus is situated on the Haldimand Tract, which is the land promised to the Six Nations and includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. Our active work towards reconciliation takes place across our campuses through research, learning, teaching, and community building, and is coordinated within the Office of Indigenous Relations. So you can see one of the images I have here, with this beautiful colored roof. This is a brand new Indigenous outdoor gathering space that was recently opened on campus. And it's a representation of the continuous presence of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit on this territory. And it's meant to teach, celebrate, gather, and bring awareness about Indigenous peoples and cultures. It also provides an outdoor classroom setting for educating on First Nations, Métis, and Inuit content, and is a space for everyone just to gather and enjoy. All right, so some quick housekeeping as we get going here. So we'll have a presentation, a formal presentation, followed by a question and answer. And just for anyone wondering, this is going to be recorded and we'll be posting it both on the Future Graduate Students website, but also since you've registered, you will get a link to the recording directly in your email. Now, if you do have questions during the presentation, as I'm sure many people do, please use that Q&A function towards the bottom of your screen. I would encourage though because we are going to be sharing a lot of information, so maybe try and hold some of your questions until a little bit later in the presentation because we may in fact be answering your question. And also you will be able to upvote questions as well. And we will try and flag some questions to answer live, but we are actually going to try and get through as many as we can. We also have any links that are mentioned will be added to the chat so you can follow along. But they will also be included with the recording as well. As I said, the recording will be emailed to you. And if you do need closed captioning at all, you can enable that just hitting the CC button at the bottom of your screen. All right, so just a little intro about Waterloo Region and living here in Kitchener-Waterloo. So the University of Waterloo is located in Southern Ontario, in the city of Waterloo, which is about 100 kilometers west of Toronto, Ontario, which is the biggest city in Canada. So Waterloo is accessible by car, train, and bus, and that's from Toronto and from other cities as well. And campus itself is located in the city of Waterloo, which is a short distance from the main downtown area of Waterloo, which we actually call Uptown Waterloo, a bit confusingly, but that's what we call it. And you can easily get to campus by public transportation from around the region, which includes the ION Light Rail Rapid Transit line. And you can check out our interactive campus map if you happen to be visiting campus. You can also check out our graduate studies self-guided tour to kind of get to know your way around. But if you don't have a chance to visit ahead of time, we also have a couple videos that you can check out. We have a campus tour specifically for grad students, and we also have a tour of Waterloo Region. So just a few things to know about the region of Waterloo. So it's made up of three different cities, which are Kitchener, Waterloo, and Cambridge. And then we have some surrounding townships as well. And this area is actually one of the fastest growing regions in Canada, and it's currently home to about 600,000 residents. We're also one of the top startup ecosystems in the world, and we're home to some of Canada's largest tech companies, global think tanks, and innovation hubs, with large companies like Google, OpenText, and SAP calling this region home. And we also have a vibrant food scene. There are farmers markets, lots of craft breweries, and amazing restaurants with food from all around the world. And there's also lots of stuff to do. There's Christmas markets and food festivals, and almost every weekend in the summer, there is an event or festival going on somewhere in the city, in the local parks. Always lots of things going on. And we also host the world's largest Oktoberfest outside of Munich, Germany in October, which is always a big celebration. In the chat, we're going to put a couple of Instagram accounts that you can follow if you kind of want to get a sneak peek of some events and things happening in the region and sort of see what restaurants and things there are. One of them is called Curated KW, and another one is called KW Famous. Those are all run by local people who want to keep everyone apprised of like what's going on and sort of like hidden gems and secret spots and neat things to do and fun things going on. So those are really great accounts to follow if you just kind of want to see what's going on in the region. We also have lots of outdoor amenities, bike trails, walking trails. There's even a little ski hill in Kitchener. It's just a little one, but we have one. There's cross-country ski trails, and so there's really never a shortage of things to do here, no matter what the season is. And as I mentioned, you can check out our tour of the region, the video tour. And then one thing I do want to mention, as we're talking about, things to do and what the region is like, is really understanding what your living costs may be here. So we do have a housing and living cost page, which we will talk more about, but we'll pop that into the chat now, where we have some helpful costs that you can consider. One-time costs, things like winter jacket, winter boots, especially if you're coming from a place where you may not need those are all important things and costs to consider when you're coming here. So before we dive into the presentation, I know that some of you watching today may be joining one of our online programs that only require you to be on campus for a week or two before the start of fall term. And so you may only be looking for short-term accommodation. So we're going to put some of that info in the chat for you right now. We do offer short-term accommodation options both on campus and our residences, as well as United College. And there's also some other hotel options as well. So those are important to get on early, especially I know the United College ones do fill up very quickly. But we also have the resident spaces as well. So if you're coming for one of those on-campus residencies, we do have options for you. So if you were just here for that, just wanted to get you that info right away. So I will now pass it over to Maria, who will take us through our on-campus housing options.
Thank you, Kiri. Hi, everyone. I'll be talking to you today about some on-campus housing options that we have for our graduate students. So in campus housing, we do have two main buildings where graduate students can apply to live with us on campus. And this webinar will be focusing on those two graduate housing options, which is the Columbia Lake Village South and Columbia Lake Village North, which also supports our family housing students. So just talking a little bit more about that. So Columbia Lake Village, which is CLV for short, is made up of two side-by-side townhouse complexes. So we have the CLV South and then the CLV North. But together they make up the Columbia Lake Village community. So these residences are close to the main campus, and you can find the CLV located at the northwest corner of Columbia Street and Westmount Road. And that's about a 15 to 20-minute walk to main campus. So it is like you can go to the bus stops, which is located um, in front, sorry, it's located in front of the two bus stops. And all graduate students are eligible for the local universal GRT bus pass. So this allows students to hop onto any city bus that goes by the CLV residences and also loops around the campus ring road. So there is always city buses throughout the year, and they do help provide options for getting to campus or really getting around the city. And just something to also know, while campus housing, we do mostly support with on-campus housing options. Students are more than welcome to reach out to us about any off-campus housing options as well. This can include things such as knowing where to start, guidance to make more informed housing decisions, that being on or off campus, things to take in consideration before you rent off campus, and so forth. But we just want to ensure you all that your questions about housing needs and concerns can be looked into, regardless of whether you're living on or off campus. But I believe we'll also have more discussion about that later today with some off-campus housing presented later today in the webinar.
Next slide, Maria.
Yes,
Yep.
please. Okay. So just continuing more on our on-campus housing. So in campus housing, we have approximately 400 bed spaces in our graduate housing, and then 82 family units in family housing. So for students, for both graduate and family housing students, in order to apply and be eligible to live in campus housing, the student must remain enrolled as a full-time status in a graduate academic program. So by doing so, students are able to apply and renew their housing contract each term or each year. And just kind of going through what we have here on the slides, I'm just going to go first through our graduate housing slides. So in graduate housing, we have both the CLV South and CLV North options that are available. So we have shared accommodations in CLV South for 4-bedroom and 1-bathroom townhouses. For CLV North, we have 2-bedroom and 1.5 bathroom townhouses. And we also have two contract types when it comes to the graduate housing. So we have our first one, which is the 4-month renewable contract, and that typically aligned with students' academic terms. So that can be for the fall term, winter, or spring term. And then we also have our 8-month contract types. So we have one for a um, fall winter and then another one for winter spring. So these are non-renewable contracts. But for any students who are newly admitted, let's say coming into the winter term, we do have that winter spring option available. And for students who are admitted for the September, which is going to be for fall, the fall and winter option is available as well and maybe best aligned with your schedule. Um, and with the graduate housing, with our rooms that are available, it is mostly furnished. Some appliances are included. So it can be things like a bed, some desks, some storage space, and things like that. We also have a kitchen available. And then we also have other amenities that are available to help support our students once they live with us on campus, as you can see on the screen. And then going through with our student family housing. So student family housing, we have the CLV North option only for them. So that would be, again, the entire CLV North house, so which would be that 2-bedroom, 1.5 bathroom townhouse. For these students, the contract type would look like a 12-month renewable contract. Typically, this happens between August 1st and through July 31st annually. For these spaces, they are typically unfurnished, so students may need to bring their own appliances, but we do have, again, that kitchen that is available, so that is included into that unfurnished space. But anything else may need to be brought from the students, like a bed in, however, so. And just in regards to residence fees, this applies for both the graduate and student family housing. You can refer to our campus housing website for the exact fees amount. So that should be in our chat right now. But for these single graduate housing fees, those are paid once at the beginning of each term. So that would be in the same fashion that you would do for tuition fees. So that will be done through your Quest account. For family housing fees, those are paid monthly through our online payment portal. So typically when students accept or receive a housing offer from us and accept that offer, they will have access to our online payment portal to make those payments for the fees.
All right, thanks, Maria. Now I will pass it over to Gwen, and she'll tell us a bit about what it's like to live at Columbia Lake Village.
Just trying to get my audio on there.
Yeah.
Good morning, good afternoon. Like Carrie said, my name is Gwen. I am the manager for the families and grad students that live at Columbia Lake. And it's very much a unique experience in that we try and create a neighborhood feeling while you live with us on campus. Our mandate is really that we want to ensure that you absolutely love living with us and you benefit from living on campus, both personally and academically, and that Waterloo becomes the graduate choice. As said before, we have two distinct communities. So there is the family community, and then there is also the graduate community. Both are graduates, but they do live within the same complex area. And we do have graduate dons that are an essential part of our program. So dons live on campus with the students. And what they do is they support and they organize some programs. They make sure that students feel connected, that any issues that arise are managed, and that students feel supported. There are duty rounds that happen in the evening hours as well. So our duty dons will go out and they'll walk the community. So you've got a friendly face that you can become very familiar with, but also it does act as a bit of a security measure for us. Not that it's not safe, but more that it's making sure that we are looking at safety issues, trip hazards, things happening out in the community, facilities issues we're managing. The other benefit to having a Don in the community is when they run programs, they actually help support and foster that sense of belonging. They will reach out to residents, making sure that they're good, welcoming them to the community, ensuring that they know how to deal with any facilities issues, especially if it's the first time where you're living on your own. They will also reach out over Teams. We have support through a Teams, Microsoft Teams app, and they will let you know of live events that are happening in the Central Complex, whether that's related to kids events, family events, or graduate events. We try and tailor our programming to ensure that it meets the needs of students. We're not going to run programs that are not beneficial to our client. A little bit more about campus housing is that each individual unit is a self-contained unit, whether it's with your family or with your roommates. All the utilities, high-speed internet, community events, it's all considered as part of our fees. Like Maria said, we are close to the university, which is helpful. It's about a 10-minute walk to get across to the end of campus, and then probably another 10 minutes in. You do have that community engagement, so it feels a bit like a neighborhood, which is nice instead of sometimes living off campus where you're very much independently living. There is a reliable and trustworthiness with our team. So we have maintenance staff that when you submit a maintenance issue, they will come into your house and they will physically look at the space, look at the concerns that you have, and we have round-the-clock care. So during our regular business hours, you'll have somebody that might come and investigate, but then we've also got an after-hours crew that will support any maintenance issue that you have. So 24/7, we're available, and that includes lockouts as well. So if for any reason you get locked out of your unit and your roommate's not home, you can easily come to the front desk or call the Duty Dawn phone and they will let you in within 15-20 minutes. The community center also has some ping pong tables, there's TVs, video games, there's quiet study area. There are like people from the south will do their laundry, but you can also sign out the community center if you want to run an event with your family or with some of your friends. And then the last thing that I wanted to note that will be new this year is we've got an advisory panel coming up. So for two different communities, we've got an advisory panel for the families and an advisory panel for the grads. And that's where students have the option to come and chat with us about certain things that are happening in their community. They're curious about facilities updates or giving us feedback on processes. So we do want to hear from our student population. And that's just a great opportunity where students can let us know how it's going and what we can do to continually improve. And that's usually through a physical format, not an online survey. So we try to really get to know our students and what our students' needs are.
That's awesome. Thanks, Gwen, for sharing that information. I'm going to pass it back over to Maria for information on applications to on-campus housing, which I'm sure a lot of folks have questions about as well.
All right. So yeah, now I'll be talking about some application processes for our graduate and student family housing students. So let's just start off with our graduate housing. So For graduate housing, it is always in high demand. So if you are interested in this type of housing, we typically encourage students to apply early on, as offers are on a first come, first served basis. And you can apply with the link that we'll have in the chat right there and take a look into that. But a good thing to know is that with our application or for our current graduate students who are living with us right now, they are able to renew their contract for the next upcoming term. And usually the take rate for this and for our renewals are typically around 80%. So if you would like to apply, we are expecting to open the fall 2025 applications on March 25th. So just something to keep in mind. This year, for our incoming graduate students who are interested in applying to live on campus, the CLB South option will be the only available option for them at this time. However, we do find that if students are continuing with us and like to continue that contract with us with that 4-month renewable contract option, they will have the opportunity to be considered for the CLB North residents if they're interested. But please know that we do try our very best to see what spaces become available for the residents. We can't fully guarantee we can accommodate these requests, but we'll do our very best to see what comes forward. But you can find more information about renewable contract process on our campus housing website for further details, and it's just something I would encourage you all to take a look into before you make your housing decision. Also, something to keep in mind is that for our students applying for this fall term, you will only see the fall only option, which is the 4-month renewable contract. And we will reach out to students who are eligible for the two-term non-renewable contract once applications are submitted. So we would just encourage you that you keep an eye on your email if you have that eligibility, and you'll have that email from us. For students who'd like to request a suite mate or roommate in your application, you can identify them through our application once you apply. But please know that if you are an incoming student, this means a new incoming housing applicant, and you're wanting to request a roommate, you'll only be able to request other incoming housing applicants as your roommates, so it wouldn't be any current students living with us right now. We can't guarantee that we can match you both, but we'll do our very best again to accommodate where it's possible and if spaces become available. But if you don't have a suite mate in mind or a roommate in mind for that, we will match you primarily based on gender and age from our end of things. And then, yes, again, just to complete that application, you must accept your offers of admission. So from the University of Waterloo, claim your What I Am ID, and then set up your two-factor authentication in order to access our application portal and apply for the fall term. Um, we also have our family housing. So for family housing, we highly recommend students to take some time to review the eligibility criteria before applying. This is just to ensure that you find that the family housing option is for you. Our family housing is also in very high demand, and we have very limited numbers of units, which is, as mentioned earlier, it was 82 units that we have for our family housing. And unfortunately, we can't fully guarantee this type of housing for everybody. We find that for students and family housing, there's about 5 to 10 students, new students that move in to our accommodations each year based on the waiting list that we have. So you can join our family waiting list through our application. And again, that will be through that apply residence link that we have on the chat. And our team will take that into consideration. The family waitlist is ever ongoing, which means that you'll only need to sign up once. Once you've signed up, once that term, you will receive an email invitation from us asking if you'd like to keep your spot active on the waitlist and you're showing interest to continue that family housing application. But if you no longer are interested in being in the waitlist and you will need to remove your be on the wait list, you would need to remove your name or let the waitlist position expire whenever we come ask you about your interest for each term. If you don't do that, then you'll continue to have that space in the list until you reach it to the front of the wait line of the wait list. So if we do reach your spot on that wait list and you're at the top, a campus housing staff member will reach out to you as soon as possible with a residence offer and a potential move-in date. So just something to keep in mind, housing offers are not guaranteed. It is based when and if our current students for family housing decide to leave campus housing. In addition to this, units may become available at any time throughout the academic year, and a contract date may not coincide with the term start dates. So just knowing that, just make sure that you also have your What I Am as well activated, and you have your two-factor authentication all set up when you are planning to apply, or if you're planning to apply. And just something to keep in mind as well, just for our family housing for this year, we will have a bit of a contract change for the upcoming fall 2025 term. So we'll no longer be on a yearly basis, but rather we're going to be moving into a term basis. So just something to keep in mind as you apply in the future.
Thanks, Maria. Yeah, it can be a little bit, there are some big differences, as Maria said, between our family housing and graduate housing. So yeah, always just important to really pay attention to all of those details. So thank you for sharing that with us. I'll now pass it over to Brianna, who will talk about another one of our on-campus options, which is United College, and she will tell you all about what that is.
Hey, so as mentioned, my name is Brianna Johnston. I'm the Admissions and Guest Services Coordinator at United College. So essentially, the large majority of my job is housing occupancy and contracts with both our undergraduate and our graduate students. So you may be wondering, what is United College, or who are we? We are located on the University of Waterloo campus, and we are actually affiliated as a university college. So we are part of UW, but also our own entity. So we are actually a nonprofit organization. So as I said, we house about 300 undergraduate students, or just over that, and about 100 grad tenants. We house various academic programs, including the Human Rights Program, and we also house the Faculty of Environment, Living Learning Community, and Women in Engineering in our undergrad. So we're very proud of the fact that we're kind of just this nice little small community and very inclusive environment for the people who live here. So inside our graduate building is about 6 stories with shared suites and apartments. So I'll just briefly talk about those 2 different types of units. And then a little bit more information about our applications. So our shared suites are units that are shared between 2 or 3 people. They are individuals identified as the same gender. We can't do very much with roommate matching because it's just basically what rooms have come available, but we do try to match based on age or program, things like that. So each person would have their own private bedroom that's locked that no one else has access to. And then the other folks in the suite share the kitchen, bathroom, and living room with you. Some of our suites don't actually have living rooms. They're a little bit more cost effective that way. We also have our apartments. So they're 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. So you're renting the entire unit on your own, not sharing with anybody else. Generally speaking, they are prioritized for folks who are living with a partner and or children, or they might have specific requirements like accessibility needs and things like that. All of our fees are inclusive of all your utilities, including internet, because you are on main campus, so you're part of the UW Wi-Fi. Laundry and parking are extra, but we do attempt to keep those at a low price for you. Overall, we aim to keep our fees as low as possible and are generally lower than most off-campus comparable options for our apartments, especially. But because of this, our tenants do like to stay for longer, and our openings that we do have tend to fill up very quickly. Our applications are open to graduate students, but we do also make offers to postdoc and other employees of the University of Waterloo. So because of this, that also extends folks' stays with us, so less turnover for that reason as well. We do have a service desk that's open from 8:30 to 4:30 during the day, during Monday to Friday, and our 24 hours after hours line. So that's very similar to what they spoke about in campus housing. So it is our Dawn's on call that deal with any urgent matters that you might have. Our applications are now open for fall. Offers are not guaranteed, and we only contact people who are successful applicants that we can send an offer to. Our offers will start going out the first week of May. So applying the sooner the better. And again, we do have a wait list, but we do try to make offers as soon as we can for folks, and we go term by term. So spring term right now, we're making offers starting May, and starting in May, we'll make offers for September. I think my contact information is on the slide there, and there should be a link that's going to be made accessible to you in the chat for our application portal.
Perfect. Thanks, Brianna. So now we've talked about some of our on-campus offerings. So we will chat a bit about off-campus housing, because if you're not able to get a spot in on-campus housing, or you prefer to live off-campus, you do have options. So just want to start a bit with, what are the steps you want to follow if you are going to be pursuing off-campus housing. So step one, you're going to want to check out our off-campus housing website that has tons of tips and resources, which will be put into the chat now. And so most of the things that we're going to be talking about now are accessible from that off-campus housing page. So you just have to look a little bit, but lots of really helpful things there. So that's a really great place to start. And then something else that you're going to want to do before you really start your search is familiarize yourself with the area. So remember at the beginning, I talked about there's sort of 3 different cities and that make up Waterloo region, and there's some townships that are sort of a little more country rural that are just outside. So it's worth spending some time with, again, our interactive student housing map, which is a different map that shows sort of some different options, and also even on Google Maps. And you can get an idea of how far away different areas and neighborhoods are from the university. So when you're searching through listings, you'll have an idea of how convenient that might be for you. And then another thing to check out at the same time is our transit system. So I mentioned before we have the ION light rail transit, and we also have an extensive bus network, and that's called the GRT systems, or stands for Grand River Transit. And if you are living off campus, usually the further away you live from campus, sometimes the more affordable it can be, because the places often that are close to campus pay a little bit of a premium for that. Again, it all really depends, and it can really depend on what neighborhood you're in. But sometimes the further out you go, say you're in like a further area, like in a different part of Kitchener, say, that's maybe half an hour away from the campus, you might be able to find some rents that are a little bit cheaper. But in that case, take a look at the transit website, and then also take a look at Google Maps for your transit options to see how close you are. If you're close to an ION station or a bus stop, and if you have to transfer buses, that kind of thing is all really important, kind of to get an idea of what your journey into campus would be like. And of course, it will be easier if you don't have a car. It will be much easier for you to live along a transit line as well. So a good place to start when you're talking about, so you have an idea of the area, you sort of identified some, places that maybe you might want to live, some areas. A good place to start looking at listings is called Places for Students. So this is a website and service which the university has partnered with for housing options. So what does partnered with mean? So partnered with means that Places for Students verifies all University of Waterloo rental listings, and verifies that they abide by the City of Waterloo's rental housing licensing bylaw. So that means that everything is above board. Those ones aren't going to be scam listings. The university doesn't independently look at all of those, but Places for Students is vetting those. Landlords have to register, students have to register. So it's a bit more of a rigorous process than just if you're looking on somewhere like Kijiji. So Places for Students will offer listings that are descriptive with photos. They have like amenity icons, floor plans, mapping. They also have sublets if you're looking for something a little shorter term, or you can make a roommate profile. So you do have to register. You can register to post a free roommate profile or sublet listing. But Places for Students does work with local landlords and accommodation to post available rental options. So, and as I mentioned, landlords do register to post property listings there. So that is really a good place to start, and we've posted that info there in the chat. But there are, of course, other listing options as well, which we will put that whole list into the chat. Some are specifically geared to students. For example, like Accommodate You and Icon, they are, again, not affiliated with the university. Sometimes that can get a little bit confusing, because sometimes in the way they message, they make it sort of sound like they're almost like a campus housing option. They are geared to students, but they are not affiliated at all with the University of Waterloo. And actually, Maria will, she can share a little bit more info about some of those sort of geared to student rentals coming up in a bit. But, you know, places like Kijiji, rentals.ca, those are all just, you know, sort of your typical rental listings. So just a notice about those ones. If you are looking on any rental sites that are not geared towards students, so Kijiji, for example, you won't find much for September until about 2 months beforehand. That's because in Ontario, if you're renting a place, you must give 60 days notice if you're leaving. So most rental properties aren't listed until 60 days before the occupancy date, because if a tenant is leaving, they wouldn't be giving notice until July 1st that they were leaving. So if a place is going to be available for September 1st, it's often not going to be listed until into July and sometimes later. I mean, there will always be exceptions. Sometimes there will be ones posted earlier. But just as a note, if you're looking around and you're like, why am I not seeing very many, like very much availability for September? That's why. That's just how sort of the Tenancy Act works in Ontario. There's also a handy tip sheet with steps for finding off-campus housing, which we'll post in the chat. But again, all of this is available also on our off-campus housing website. So that's just sort of a little intro about some good steps for before you're looking for off-campus housing and then where you can look. And then this is just a sort of what the homepage of Places for Students looks like. And now we'll continue with off-campus info. Brianna will take us through some of the more logistics in terms of what you need to know before you rent with things around leases and your rights as a tenant. So back to you, Brianna.
Hello. So I have lived in the Kitchener-Waterloo area myself for about 12 to almost 15 years at this point. So I have a fair amount of experience as a renter. I am also a transit person, so I can tell you a little bit more about that if you want to shoot me an email. I come in from Kitchener, for example, and it takes me about an hour because I take a bus and then the train. But I like to read, so it takes up the time really quickly. The other thing is I've come across a fair amount of stories in the time that I've worked at United College of folks who have had some challenges while they have been looking for rentals. Some are scary stories of people who have been scammed, but there are also plenty of places off campus that are fine and good places for people to live. So I'm just going to go through some tips that can kind of help you go through the listings that you see and to make the best and most informed decisions that you can. So one of the things is you might be sharing your space with a few different roommates. If you know the people already ahead of time, I think it's really important to have a conversation and establish some expectations and guidelines and kind of make sure everybody's on the same page. If you're meeting folks for the first time before sharing the space, if you aren't able to meet in person, I highly recommend having a video call or some other way to meet them to make sure you actually can have some time to get to know them before you move in for the first day that you're there. It's really important that you check the legitimacy of the online ads. So Carrie talked a little bit about some places that you can look for rentals, but unfortunately there are always some folks out there who are trying to take advantage. So looking up on as simple as a Google search to make sure the location of the rental that you can see on Google Maps that it actually exists, Googling the company itself, that the rental company that has put posted the listing. And then also, looking for those negative reviews. Reddit is a great place to take a look about other people's experiences with whatever organization you're looking to rent from. Everybody has a different opinion about things, but it's really important that you have the most amount of information you can before you kind of hop into a contract with somebody. Breaking down your costs. So Carrie suggested the link that they have that breaks down some of the costs of living around here. And there's kind of a lot of details that you have to sort of familiarize yourself with. So right now, standard rent is $950 up to $2,000 a month for apartments. Depending on how close you're living to the campus, if you're living with other roommates, that sort of thing. It's a really important thing to look at the listings pricing and if it includes utilities. More often than not, all utilities will not be included in your rental. So it's really important to know how much that's going to cost you each month, whether or not there's additional rental fees for things like the meter for your gas or that sort of thing. And also just knowing what the bills mean. So for example, you can get a hydro bill, and that sounds like that should be your water bill, but it's actually your electricity bill. I'm assuming because we used to be hydroelectric a while ago. So just making sure you're as familiar as you can be with the additional costs. The other thing is rentals sometimes include things like parking, or sometimes you're paying extra for parking. And is that parking, on the street, or is it in a parking lot attached to the apartment building? There's, just the details that you can kind of break down for yourself. We've already mentioned the housing page that has all the kind of charts of cost of living, groceries, all those different things. So if you kind of circle back to the actual documentation and the contracts that you're going to be signing. So like any other legal document, you're going to make sure that you read through it and understand it. And, there's a lot of details that you maybe need to be Googling or asking somebody else to clarify before you sign. So if there's even one chunk of that lease agreement that you don't understand, taking the extra few minutes to look it up online or ask somebody is really important, so that you know exactly what you're getting into. In Ontario, we have the Residential Tenancy Act. So that's kind of the guidelines of how the relationship needs to be between the renter and the leasing agent. So it's keeping them in check and making sure they're not demanding like crazy expectations from you, but it's also making sure that renters are following the appropriate guidelines for the building that they're in. Every single apartment building should be following a standard lease. So you can look up the actual standard lease. We'll talk about that a little bit on the next slide. So it's in place, so everybody's signing for the same thing, basically, and it's meant to keep rental companies kind of in check so that they're not asking for obscure, crazy things. It also gives us the guidelines of like how much rental costs can go up each year. So, I think it's on average 2.5% that you're allowed to increase. If you want to increase higher than that as a rental company, you need to actually go through like steps to do that. However, there's one really specific part of that doesn't actually align very well with newer rentals. So if a building has actually been built since the end of 2018, landlords can increase their rent however they want. So quite literally 100% if they wanted. So it was something put in place a few years ago by the government that newer buildings don't have to abide by the RTA, the Residential Tenancy Act annual increase. So it may be great to be in a new building and you have newer appliances and shiny new floors, but there is a bit of a downside sometimes too. So you just have to be cautious of all of that information. Obviously, you can find that online under the Residential Tenancy Act as well. Just talking to the landlord and getting the most information about them. They're allowed to ask for for last month's rent, which is just the deposit for the unit. So when you move out, your last month has already been paid for. They shouldn't be asking for first and last or multiple months worth of rent. Your only deposit can be the last month's rent. The only other deposit that they should be able to ask for is a key deposit. And all that is the cost to replace the key itself, not to change the locks, not for any other reason. And it's not legal to ask for a damage deposit. So just being cognizant of that information before you move in. Again, they might ask for like post-dated checks. So you might write a post-dated check for your first month, or you're paying it when you move in for the first month that you're living there. I think I'm going to pop to the next slide, Carrie, if I can. There we go. So I started talking a little bit about the lease. So we should have the lease, the link for the standard lease made available to you. It's legally binding contract between you and the landlord, granting use and occupation of the specified property during the period of time. So generally they're 1 year with the opportunity to renew month by month after that. That's standard. You are required to give 60 days notice when you want to withdraw from the contract. Anything outside of the standard lease that is in place in Ontario is not technically legal. So they may tell you in their lease that no pets are allowed, for example. That's not allowed. Technically, everybody should be allowed to bring a pet, but often landlords will put that in there because they don't want to deal with the potential mess that a pet can cause. However, even if you sign something that says no pets, technically you can have a pet. That's just one single example, but there are other things that landlords may try to put on a standard lease. So again, just making sure you're familiar with what that template looks like. Your rights as a tenant, there's a lot that should be, happening for you. That's maintaining the building, that's answering any concerns that you have in terms of, broken things in your apartment, that sort of thing. Seeing the unit itself, I think, is a really important thing ahead of time, and getting to know what the space is that you're going to be living in. So you may not live near Waterloo right now. So asking for a video tour from the landlord, or sending someone in the area to actually go and have that tour, I think, is a really important thing. Not only so you know the space that you're going to be living in, but also just to ensure that it exists, right? Someone is renting an apartment to you and you show up and that apartment doesn't exist. That's going to be a problem. Doesn't happen a lot, but it can. So making sure that you actually physically see the space before you're renting. And then again, just making sure that you're renting from a company that's going to maintain the standards, maintenance of the building, addressing any concerns that you have, just making sure that, when you ask them to fix your shower, that they're actually going to do that for you. They're going to have some expectations of you before you sign the contract as well. So they might ask for references from places you've lived before. They can ask to see identification to make sure you're a real person, but there shouldn't be any reason that they're actually asking for copies or pictures of things like a driver's license, social insurance number, passport, none of that. They don't need that kind of personal information from you, specifically not copies of it, because you don't know what someone's going to do with that. Breaking the lease, you can't really. If you signed a contract, you're going to be on the hook for paying for whatever that contract is, even if you end up not being able to live there for the entire length of the contract. So if you try to break the lease, even if it's for what seems like valid reasons, like they're a really terrible landlord, you've still signed to say that you're going to pay for it. So you can go through the landlord-tenant board for any grievances, but just reminding yourself that even if you're unhappy in the space that you're in, if you leave a lease early, you're going to have to pay to stay, unless they can find someone to replace you. They can't charge rent twice for an apartment, for example. Safety concerns are always an important thing to look up. So I think that we're going to have a link for you for resources about safety, personal safety, fire safety. What are all the different guidelines and that are in place for the buildings, but also tips about personal safety when you're out on your own, and where you're living, and in relation to the campus and that sort of thing. Lastly, I just want to talk a little bit about sort of the legal side of things, and more so red flags that you can look for, because we are going to let Maria from Grad Studies, Grad Student Association, talk about a bit more of that as well. So red flags are exactly what they sound like, right? You're something is triggering in your brain, telling you that something might be off. So again, if they're asking for personal information and copies of things that they don't require, that's kind of a red flag. They might be also asking too many weird personal questions. Sometimes I have an example of a married student. She's quite young. So the landlord was asking her, "Why are you married so young? Is your husband here with you?" And weird things like that. So, recommended to her not to rent from him. Going outside the standard lease, which I've already mentioned. Being unclear with explanations, or sort of brushing off your questions. If you ask a straightforward question and they can't give you a straightforward answer, or they sort of talk around it or change the subject, those kind of things, there's probably a reason they're trying not to answer your question. So just, if something flags to you, just to keep that in mind. One of the things that is a big red flag is it too good to be true? So if you see this incredible posting that it's this beautiful apartment, it's furnished, recently renovated, and it is way cheaper, like hundreds of dollars cheaper a month than anybody else in the area, that's probably not real. It's, if something seems too good to be true, it likely is too good to be true. So again, you're making the list of the things that you need, you're looking at all the information that you can find online, and you're comparing different rentals. And if one just seems unbelievable, it's probably because it's unbelievable. And the biggest thing is just trusting your gut. Like when you are talking to someone or you are meeting someone, you can get a bad vibe, right? Like that, there's probably a reason you're feeling uncomfortable. Yes, you might be anxious and stressed and that sort of thing, but I think we all kind of have that gut instinct. So if something just feels off, before you sign anything, talk to someone whose opinion you trust and kind of go through the things that are maybe bouncing around in your head before you actually go ahead and sign anything. There is some legal support, free legal support in the University of Waterloo through the Grad Students Association to help people when they come into those conflicts. But often that is a secondary thing. That is a problem that comes up after you've started to rent from someone. So again, I'm gonna swing over to Maria to talk a little bit more about that. But I would like to put it out there that as much as I'm here to give you information about United College, if you have some questions, I'm not, a professional expert, but I'm happy to try to answer some questions or help redirect as well. So you can always shoot me an email. And that's that for me.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Brianna. So I know some of this stuff can sound a little intimidating and scary, but most experiences are good. But as Brianna said, you just have to be aware for those times that aren't. So we just want to make sure that everyone is feeling prepared and has that information. So now I will pass it over to Maria, who will share a bit more about what the Graduate Student Association can help you with.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. So I am a PhD student, so I'm a current student. I have lived off campus only. So if anyone has questions about living off campus, especially as Brianna mentioned, some of the student geared off campus housing companies their leases do not always follow the standard lease agreement. So it's just very important to read the details, ask a lot of questions prior to signing with any property management company or private landlord itself, and really making sure you compare to the standard lease agreement as well. And if you're in a situation where you do need to sign a lease that is longer than the year, making sure you read all the details of those leases so you know any dates of canceling your lease, the specific terms, and that sort of thing. So I'm here from the Graduate Student Association. So we at the GSA, we represent grad students at the University of Waterloo, and our goal is really to work to serve the needs of grad students for their academic, social, and advocacy supports. So we do have different staff members who work in different areas to really try and advocate for students' best interests and your well-being. So in my role, I work with on and off campus partners to really advocate for graduate student housing concerns. A lot of times it's affordability, availability of housing, that sort of thing. So what we do is we have a lot of informational campaigns, which we'll post on our social media pages. We do have an affordable living affordably in housing page on our GSA site, which has links to several off-campus housing websites and companies. We also have links to other places in the area. So for example, different like thrift stores, different places you can go to get support with any housing issues. We do have free legal support regarding tenancy issues. So that's offered by your student care plan. And we also have worked with Waterloo Region Community Legal Services, and they've offered drop-in services. So grad students can drop in online and speak with one of their lawyers or someone from their legal team about any of your tenancy concerns. We do highly recommend that grad students work with either student care or the Waterloo region to get any support. So in my role, if you ever emailed me and you had a question about where to look for housing or regarding a tenancy issue, then you can, I can forward you the right contact information or where to look for those issues. That's part of what we do. So the GSA itself has a lot of services and programs. One of them is the on-campus like student hub called the Grad House. There's events for international students. We do have events for like BIPOC students, 2S LGBTQ students. We have advising support and legal support as well. And we also, just this week, when it comes time for taxes and that sort of thing, we have additional workshops and support in those areas as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Maria. I'm just going to put up a slide here that has the GSA website as well as Maria's contact information if you want to reach out to her with any more questions. So we'll just leave that up there for a second. And then in just a minute here, we'll get into the Q&A. So as we have our Q&A, I'll ask all of our panelists to come back on to video. And I've put up the website here for campus housing, as well as if you do still have questions, you can reach out to me. My email was on the Zoom confirmation that you would have received. You can reach out to me or anyone here, Brianna, Maria, or you can reach out to campus housing directly at housing@uwaterloo.ca. So I'm going to stop sharing so that we are all on screen. And I've seen we've had lots of great questions come in. So we had somebody ask when the graduate housing application for fall 2025 opens, and that is March 25th, I believe, Maria. Yep. So, and the United one is already open. So
Yeah, we're already open.
yeah. So just to confirm, you have to have accepted your offer of admission. So you have to be planning to come here, accepted your offer, and then you can do your application. Question about the wait list for student family housing, Columbia Lake Village. How long approximately might someone have to wait if they're on that list?
Yeah, I can answer that. So for family housing waitlist, it really depends on the time that a student applies with us for our application. When students apply, they'll get a position number on the wait list, and we typically send out offers to family housing students following that position number. So if you're, let's say, in the 200s, for example, you might not hear from us right away about a housing offer. It'll be the next person in line that we typically start sending out those offers. So um, again, just depends on when you start applying and what position you are on the wait list at that point.
Thanks, Maria. Question about student status in terms of if you're not a full-time student. So if you're maybe in a thesis program, but you're a part-time student, are you able to apply for campus housing?
Yeah, so typically listed in our contract terms and conditions, for students to really be eligible to apply with us, they do need to start off as a full-time enrolled student and full-time status student. So that would include like a full-time status either with us or even with the university colleges. But yes, they must remain as full-time at first. But if they do make a change later on, I'd say as a part-time student, we'd still be able to accept them at that point. But that would only be if they have a current application or housing contract with us at that point.
Right. So sort of like in an exceptional situation. Yeah.
Yeah.
So full-time.
We do accept part-time students
Good to know.
if needed, but again, only if we have space.
Yep. Perfect. Someone is asking about the four bedroom suites in CLV South. Is it still one bathroom for the four? Don't know who wants to jump in and answer that one.
Yes, that should still remain the same.
Yes. So yep, confirming yes, it is one bathroom for four people. Can graduate students apply to be a residence don? And how do they do that?
Yeah, I believe we do have our jobs and leadership page on our campus housing website for students who are interested to be a residence don. I believe we do have one for graduate students as well. It wouldn't be handled from the campus housing office particularly. It would be one of our other campus housing departments that would take care of that. I believe that would be our residence life team that takes care of hiring dons. But if students are interested, we do have a link about that online and a timeline, I believe, for that hiring process for the dons if they're interested.
Gwen, do you know if would a new student typically apply for a donship, or is it usually once you've been in residence already
I
for a
would
while?
say typically, from what I've seen, it's typically students who have already lived with us
Oh,
in
okay.
residence, just so they have that experience. Can't say the likelihood of how it would be for a newer student if they applied now, but yeah, that is available for them if they are interested.
What I would say is also like if somebody's interested in that, as soon as you let us know, anytime that there's turnover or there's opportunity, we would consider any and all applicants. And there's an application process that's a little more robust because we hire on campus over 120 dons. So the graduate don is a different experience and it's a different process. But as soon as you're interested, I would let your RLC know. That's a residence life coordinator, and then they would help advocate to get you in line for that if it's something that you would want to consider throughout your journey as a grad student.
Great, thanks, Gwen. Question about deadline to apply for residence. I mean, there technically isn't a deadline, but as Maria said, it is first come, first serve. And so offers do go out. Maria, do they typically start going out around the May timing?
Yeah, so I'd say once we receive the applications from students, we take some time to review that. It shouldn't be shortly after that, but offers would go on a more ongoing basis at that point as well. So we just typically encourage students to keep an eye out on their email for any housing updates from us when that happens for housing offer.
Perfect. Thanks, Maria. So we have a couple questions around suites, like living alone, and then can they live in CLV North, for example, as a single student?
I can speak to this one a little bit. So like Maria had said earlier, for grad students, when they're applying, they're going to be considered more for the South unit. But it's kind of like once you get in, you have internal status. So that's an important component to consider that if you applied and got accepted into residence, yes, as a single student, absolutely, you will be placed in the South with the idea that come the following term, we have an application process as part of our renewal process that says anybody who wants to apply to move to the North, you might have built community with folks and you have friends, and then you can apply to live with someone. If Carrie and I wanted to live together and I put Carrie's name on the application and Carrie put my name on the application, then that makes it easier for us internally to assign you to a potentially new unit in the North. So that's just something to consider that we don't publish because it's a lot of complex logistical work internally, but similar to Brianna, what they were saying as people extending their contracts, you have the opportunity once you live with us to continue extending your contract. We don't go out to new business until we've satisfied internally what grad students are doing, whether they're extending, and then we try and give you the opportunity to move to the North if the opportunity exists. And so it's kind of like this staggered approach where we put you into the South, but then you'll gradually move to the North if that's something that you choose. Does that help answer the question, Carrie?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, it does. Thank you. There's some questions around competitiveness of the application. So like probability of getting accepted. They're saying here both for the single graduate and family. I think I can just jump in on the family, as Maria previously said, there is the wait list, as she was just talking about. But can anybody jump in about the single graduate housing and what the probability of acceptance is like there?
I would say typically for graduate housing, it is typically a very high in demand process and application process for that. It's hard to give, I would say it's hard to give an approximate probability of getting accepted. It really just depends on students who do receive that offer. If they're accepting or declining that offer, then we see what spaces become available. So it's hard to really say or predict how students may take that or if they're accepting that. We do find that students sometimes do decline their offer and then that space becomes available, and then we typically reach out to the student to see if they're interested to accept that offer at that time.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, I'd say there is it kind of goes on a rolling basis, and I mean, it is really hard to say exactly. but I know, can't remember if we covered this already, that even if, so maybe if you don't get in for the fall, there also is a chance that you could reapply for the winter. Is that correct? Winter or spring, and there often are more spaces available because those are the less sort of in demand terms. If that's
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
our fall term tends to be just in higher demand just because there's a lot more programming that happens during that time compared to our winter and spring terms, which have a little bit more availability. So there's maybe a higher chance of getting a space at that time compared to the fall terms.
Yeah. Thank you. Question about postdoctoral fellows, and I believe they're only eligible at United College. Do you have to be officially common law or married to apply for family housing?
So on our website, I believe we do have some eligibility criteria for those who are interested in family housing. But typically, yes, a couple living in common law and have children would be eligible to apply for family housing. Um, and have to be married. More typically, we find that we have more married students who apply for family housing as well, so they also be eligible.
I'll jump in. Say if we can, we will offer to somebody who lives with a partner who's if they're not like legally married, or maybe they're moving in with their girlfriend or boyfriend for the first time. Again, it's very much dependent for us on what's available. So if I have an application for somebody who's married with 2 kids, that person's probably going to get priority over someone who's moving in with their boyfriend. But again, it's really based on what's open, and we do try to be flexible when we can. But we have, a much smaller system than campus housing, so it's a little easier for us to kind of tweak those elements. Versus like there need to be guidelines in place when there's a really high demand for family housing the way CLV is.
Yeah, thanks, Brianna. Couple questions around fees and costs. So those are available in some of the links that we shared earlier, both for main campus and for United College. So encourage you to explore those to get idea of the on-campus costs there.
We'll jump in. Sorry, Carrie.
Yeah.
Our fees for next year are not posted yet. I don't know about
okay.
campus housing. So ours get approved in April from our board. So those should be posted in time for you to see when our May offers start coming out.
Perfect. And I know campus housings are posted already. I did check those out. Do you know what time on March 25th the application will open?
Typically it's in the morning of our business hours, so I'd say between like 9 to 12, so like just in the morning of that. Typically that gets starts to be available for students to apply at that point.
Perfect. Question about when students should start contacting off-campus apartments to move in early September. Does anybody, maybe Maria, do you have any
Yeah.
advice on that?
I recommend if you were looking off campus to start early. There's a lot of information out there. There are a ton of options in terms of if you want to live closer to campus, then you need to more than likely go through one of the student geared off-campus housing companies. And they can accept people at any time. In comparison to, as was mentioned earlier, if you're looking more for an off-campus private landlord, then those probably you'll start looking in July. But I do recommend as soon as possible to get a feel for the area, also your program demands. So I'm in the Faculty of Arts. I do not have labs that I need to attend. So I was a little more flexible in my search for housing because I didn't need to be on campus every single day of the week. If you're in a program that requires you to be on campus all the time, you may want somewhere closer. And if that's the case, then you start looking earlier and kind of weighing the pros and cons of the different options that you have. So I do think there would be a little bit of flexibility, but the earlier the better, knowing that come July, that's when a lot of openings for September will be there.
Thanks, Maria. That's a really great point about the demands of your program in terms of how much you might need to be on campus or not. So thanks for that perspective. Question around study permit. So someone here is waiting for their study permit, as I'm sure a lot of prospective students on the call are. Do we recommend applying for housing before you get the decision on your study permit? I would say no. It depends. Like if you've been, well, actually, I don't know. Maybe Gwen or Maria, you could weigh in terms of on-campus housing. Because if you've accepted your offer of admission and you are interested in living on campus, and so you've satisfied those requirements to be eligible to apply, then I would encourage you to apply for on-campus housing. So you're on that list, and then hopefully by the time campus housing reaches out to you in that sort of May timing or May, June, then you will know about your study permit. And then if, for some reason it doesn't come through, then they would just go to the next person on the list. So Gwen, Maria, if you have any other.
Yeah, I would say, just like you said, Carrie, students are more than welcome to apply if that application is available for them and they can access that. They can apply to have their names kind of out there for us to take into consideration when we're looking at applications. Typically, we do encourage students to not, if they were, let's say, to accept or receive a housing offer, but their study permit is not available or they don't have it just yet, to not accept it until that's been like confirmed, just to ensure that everything's kind of settled through and they're able to move in when necessary or when that's available for them to move in.
Perfect, thank you. I have a couple questions sort of around average costs. As you said, this is a tough one to answer. So this one is about that's close by to campus but not part of on-campus housing. Again, this depends. Do you want to live with a roommate in a house with multiple bedrooms? Do you want to live by yourself? Do you want to live in a newer condo? So, if you're living with a roommate, maybe you can find something in that, $950, $1,000 mark, where you're with a few different people in a house, maybe even cheaper. Again, it really depends. But if you're wanting to live alone somewhere relatively close to campus, you're probably looking at closer to the $2,000 mark. Maria, or anybody else want to jump in, but especially if it's like a newer place, yeah, that's kind of what you're looking at. We do have some resources on that living costs and housing page that we shared earlier, which also links to some outside resources as well. And you'll see too, just if you want to look around at listings. But yeah, we can't give you an exact answer. So it is really going to be a range. Someone asked about which term is easier to find off-campus housing. So I don't know, Maria, do you want to take a crack at that one?
I would say the fall is the hardest to find housing just in general. But it could be difficult at any given point. But the fall would be the most difficult for sure. That's when a lot of people are looking. There are Facebook groups that are like off-campus student housing or student housing Waterloo, that kind of thing. So people do post sublets. There are listings. People are looking for roommates on there. I saw a question about roommates. So there are different avenues to kind of look and see, but usually things go pretty quickly, just no matter what it is. There is a high housing demand in like the Kitchener-Waterloo region. So it's a little difficult to say which one is a little easier than others.
Just sort of jumping off that roommate question, the one here was about if there's university resources for finding roommates, and not officially. We don't have a like an off-campus housing office where we offer any of those direct services. But what Maria said is, there are Facebook groups and other groups where you can find that, but nothing officially from the university, unfortunately. A question that a few people have upvoted here, could places for students also have scam listings, or are all those listings verified? Does anybody on the call know for certain on that one? I'm not 100% sure. Brianna?
I would suggest that if someone is willing to scam you, they will find a way no matter what resource they're using. So it's really hard to ever say 100% that you will never find a scammer on any of the websites that post, right? Even places for students, people can in theory find a workaround if they really, really try. However, that database tries very hard to verify based on the criteria you talked about with the bylaws and the tenancy agreements and that all that. So they are putting as much as they can into their database, but nothing can ever be 100% certain. That's why you start looking at other things, like the list that I talked about, to make sure you're making the most informed decision.
Yeah, that's a really good answer. Thanks, Brianna. So it's unlikely, but it could be possible. Question about roommates on the application for on-campus housing. What characteristics can you specify? And could you be matched with multiple students, maybe for more choices? I mean, I'm guessing, if there's maybe you have a religious affiliation or, things like that of what are options that you can put on the application?
I'm just trying to recall how the application kind of looked like in my head as well. But typically, when we're looking into application process for roommates, again, I think I did mention it earlier in our presentation, but it is just primarily based on as long as the student is another incoming student, um, and they have the same criteria. Typically, it could be the same reported gender, or it could be mixed. I believe we have the option for mixed genders for our graduate students. Um, Apologies, this is for students who have a roommate in mind, or is
This
this
is for
just for?
on the application, like if they can specify characteristics like, I'd prefer someone who is very quiet and, prefers being at home or like something like that.
I believe we should have some options on the application regarding that. If it's like roommates, it's like almost like a roommate questionnaire kind of situation. So
Do
there'll
they,
be options like that.
Maria, did they fill out the roommate questionnaire like the undergrad? Grads
I
fill that
believe
out?
for the graduates, I believe they should have it, but if they don't, students are more than welcome to reach out to us as well regarding that. We do have a roommate application form for them to fill out in case they do have like a specific roommate in mind. But yeah, they can always reach out to us as well in terms of eligibility to ensure that they're able to be with that roommate or not. And we can take a look into that further.
Perfect. Question about how rent would be split. So it says for sharing for a 2-bedroom, should the price of the room be divided by 2, or how is that done? Not on campus. On campus, the price that it is listed is for you. That is what you're paying. So it doesn't matter it doesn't matter if you're in one of the 4-bedroom suites. The price listed is the cost per person for you. Same for United College as well. Off campus, you have to check if they say it is per room. So if they're offering a room in a 6-bedroom house, then that they will say it's for a room. Some of some of the listings like say Kijiji or rentals.ca, and it's a 2-bedroom apartment or a 3-bedroom apartment, and they're advertising the whole apartment, that is going to be the price for the whole thing. And then if you are renting it, then you are the one who is finding the other roommates, and then you would be dividing the rent up. So yeah, usually when it's geared to students and it's multiple rooms in a house, they will say price per room. But if it's not affiliated with anything directed towards students, then it will usually be the cost for the entire suite, and then it's up to you to divide that up, and you'd also have to find your own roommates as well. We have had a couple questions about parking. Someone's asking, is it correct that it's $200 per term for a parking pass? Now, I don't know if because there is parking at Columbia Lake Village. It is an additional fee, but I don't know if it's the same price as the on-campus parking pass. Does anyone know that? I'm not 100% sure.
I believe it is. I was just trying to Google it. I believe that
Yeah.
it is. Yeah.
I think parking services on main campus, you're paying for a pass and then you're designating which lot that you are looking for. And if it is for residents, you're obviously putting in the residence that you're going to be living in. With ours, we have a separate parking pass for United College. It's $170 if you live with us. But again, that's just the lot that's attached to United College, so you wouldn't be able to use that pass in other lots. So in general, you're paying for the lot, not necessarily to park like on the whole campus.
Question around, I think this was around short-term housing, about how to apply for one week housing contract of someone who will be coming with a family. We don't offer those specifically. A lot of our short-term summer accommodations are going to be in like our undergrad dorms, I believe, which are like you could come with your family and like stay in one of the suites like that has 4 bedrooms in the undergrad
I can speak
area.
I can speak to it a little bit more.
Oh,
So
awesome.
in the summertime, we don't actually source out CLV for summer accommodations. There's 2 styles of accommodations. One is in Ronite Village, which is a traditional style residence. And then there's another, which is Mackenzie King Village. And those 2 become the hotels. Mackenzie King Village has a 4-bedroom, 2 washroom suite style accommodation. So similar to CLV, but it's located on campus a little bit closer to the main campus. And Rev or Ronite Village is similar. Now they have long-term and short-term hotel stays, so somebody can book. It's called a Dawn Suite, so it does have a mini kitchenette and a place to stay. We would have to link the summer accommodations website in here, so I can look that up and link it if you'd like, Carrie. I just have.
Oh yeah, sure. We put it in earlier, but it does not hurt to put it in again.
Yeah, that's where I would go, and I'm not sure when it's open, if it's open now, but it's something to consider for a week long instead of using an Airbnb.
Perfect. Thanks, Gwen. All right, seeing we have 8 minutes left here, we're going to try and power through some of these. Someone has been, both they and their wife have been admitted. Congratulations, that's amazing. And they're wondering about if it's better to apply for the family housing or the suite housing and then choose each other as roommates. Does anybody have any thoughts on that? Quickly?
Yeah,
When I saw you.
I would say that for them to get in, it's going to be really tough. Family housing doesn't work with the roommates. It's a self-contained unit. It's the primary resident brings the family with them. So it will be it's a separate application process, nothing to do with roommates. It's one application from the primary resident and then they bring the family with.
Like, so could they apply for single grad housing and then ask to be roommates?
No, because they can't bring their family with. Now, what I would say is if both parents are grad students, both of them can apply, but they'll probably go back to back on the wait list. So I
don't know if they have kids in this. I think it's just them and their wife.
That's
so
still considered family. Yep.
Could
they will not match grad student with a married grad student because then technically they're married student housing instead of single grad. We call it single grad behind the scenes, but we don't call it single grad to the community.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for clarifying that, Gwen.
Yeah.
Let me just go quickly. We've answered some of these already. Can you apply
Carrie?
for, yeah.
Sorry, I
No,
just
no.
saw a question. Someone's asking, can I trust University Living website? I don't know what that is, and I was just wondering if anyone else in the panel was familiar. I'm assuming it's nothing we're affiliated with, but I just wanted to, because I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, Places for Students is going to be the one that we are affiliated with, in that we have a sort of a partnership with them. And we did put in that listing, also available on the off-campus housing website, of other places to look, but we're not saying that those are like verified or not. Those are just other options. So even if it says like University Living, it's not affiliated with the university. So just a note of caution there. What happens if I get accepted for CLV and then decide to live off campus?
I believe the application process is only open for, like, once they've applied, they only have a week to accept the offer. So that doesn't give them a ton of time to figure out between on campus and off campus, unless it falls between the timeline that they get accepted and they have a potential off campus opportunity. So it's a tight turnaround because we want to get as many people through the process as possible.
Right. So like, let's say, for example, you got your offer. We'll just pick a date on May 1st. Then you would have 1 week to accept that offer or not. And then once they've accepted that offer, are they like locked in? How does that work?
They're locked in and they're required to make a deposit.
Okay.
That'd be the $500 non-refundable deposit.
Yeah.
Yep.
It
Yep.
does
So
move
once
quickly.
committed.
Yeah.
Yep. Can you apply for more than one housing option? How does that work?
Meaning family or single grad?
I
I'm
think
not
maybe they
sure, or
mean
maybe
campus
United.
housing and Unite. Those are
Yeah.
separate applications,
Yeah.
but campus housing is one application. We are one application. So depending on your status, same as what Gwen said, if you're your family, you're only considered for apartments, you're only considered for family housing, or you're only considered as a single person. So it's kind of one or the other, but we have separate applications.
Is a deposit needed when applying? No, you do not need to make a deposit when you apply, but as we just said, if once you get your offer of housing, then you have to pay. You said it was a $500 deposit?
Yep, to hold the spot.
Yep.
Or last month's rent for us for our apartments, but suites, it's $500 as well.
Is St. Jerome's University residence open to grad students?
They actually just this year opened a few units in one of their buildings for grad students. I don't know much more beyond that. It's a very small amount of apartments, and I think they do prioritize folks who are in grad studies at St. Jerome's because it is technically its own university, so it has its own programming. It's still affiliated with the University of Waterloo, to be clear. So I would just take a look on their website to see if they have any openings that they've posted, but that's very, very new to them this year.
Yes, they do not have a lot of spaces for grads. It's very few, so I would check their website to clarify. There's, yeah, very new and very few spots.
Are there any other factors taken into consideration when you choose who gets an offer for housing other than first come, first serve?
So typically when we do offers and we make that on a more like kind of rolling basis, we take into consideration like a number of factors. So it can be things such as like accessibility needs, eligibility requirements, student type, and so forth. So we take those into consideration as well when we're starting to look into offers or when we send that out. So yeah.
Somebody asking about, can we tour campus housing when we get an offer? Do you offer any? I know you can tour, you can take university tours actually at any time. You don't need to have an offer, but what about housing?
I don't believe we have it particularly for the CLV residence tours for that, but we do. I think more recently we have been opening that up to do some tours, but they have been on very specific dates. But typically we have students look into our room tours that we have available online because those are all virtual tours that are available for students to take a look into and see what housing types or what's inside those housing.
Awesome, thank you. Do international students have priority at all
Sorry,
for
I
single?
muted myself.
Oh, sorry,
I was
Brianna.
just going to say the visitor center is where you want to look for that. So when you book a campus tour, they will give you options of what kind of tour. So it might be your faculty you're looking at. United College would be one of those options. So I would say if campus housing does have anything available, the visitor center would tell you whether or not you could specifically based on whatever campus housing has provided and the times that they have it open. So for example, for United College, we give them certain days of the week and certain hours where we would have someone available to give a tour. So they're the ones who would kind of do the administration of all the tours. And that way you can kind of piggyback them. So if you want to look at the full campus and a residence, you can kind of do it all together. And then of course there are the open houses for the undergraduate students. I think technically you could show up if you're a grad student as well to tag along for a tour.
Awesome. Thanks, Brianna. All right, so we are coming up to time here. So I know we do still have more questions. A lot of these have already been answered. So I would encourage you to, once we send out the recording, have a listen through. We've answered some of these ones already. If we have not answered your question, I'm going to just pop my email in here for a quick reference. I can always direct it if I can't answer it, or you can reach out to Brianna, Maria, or housing@uwaterloo.ca. Or just reach out to me, then I can direct it to where it should go. So thank you everyone for joining us today. We hope this helps in your decision to come here or feeling more comfortable that when you are going to be coming here. So we look forward to seeing you in the fall. So thanks everyone. Bye-bye.